Hi, we're Maddie and Nico, and we are turning this empty cargo van into this tiny home on wheels. We have no building experience, but we'll take you along each step as we transform our 2020 Ford Transit van.
So today I just got done putting in speakers on the driver's side. It's fairly straightforward. It just takes a while. You gotta finagle some things and it's pretty easy. It just takes a long time. So I figured it out over there and I'll show you this side. First thing you're gonna do is take off this pillar. And how you do that, I already took this off, but this basically sits right here. So take your screwdriver, pop it off. It comes off super easily. It helps if you pry off this side. Then you have some bolts. Let's see what size they are. It's a 10 millimeter. So I just have an attachment on my drill. Take out 2 bolts, and then this thing will just pop out. So that's the first step of the tweeter. The next step is once you get the bolts off, I find that it helps if you peel back the rubber gasket on the door, just right up here, so you can get your fingers up in there. I already kind of did it, so it's already halfway off. You just put your hand up here, and then you pull this downward this way. And then if you have another hand about here, there is, I don't know if you can see it, but something in there. There's a little tab that goes through a hole right in here, so that just needs to come out of the hole that way. It'll just come off like this. On the back side of your tweeter here, obviously there's a cord, so just a little latch, push the little tab in and pull it out. So what you're left with is your tweeter. How you get that out is I take, again, small little screwdriver, and there are 3 tabs that hold this in. There's one here, there's one right there, and then there's one right here as well. So I just pried them out, and then from there you can just take out your tweeter. So here's my new tweeter. It came like this. It has like a surface mount attachment on it. So basically you could put it like right there. It could mount like that. But we're not going to use that. Basically I just want to make it look as stock as possible. So I'm just going to take every plastic piece off, the grill off, and just pretty much get the speaker, which is that piece right there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, so here's my new tweeter. The old one goes in, but this one does not. Just kind of sits on top like that. Inside of this, you can see that there's plastic ridges. So I just took a piece of gritty sandpaper till the grooves were flattened, and then my speaker could just slide right in. It's pretty snug. It didn't seem like it would go anywhere, but just to be sure, I actually used just a little bit of butyl tape just around the whole perimeter, just for good measure. So the next step is taking off this plastic door panel. There's 8 bolts that you need to get to, and they're all covered by these little tabs. There's one here, there's one inside there, there's one right there, there's one right back in here, there's one here, there's 2 on the bottom, 1, 2, and there's one behind this red light. Just got all the bolts off. Next part is pulling out the tabs and lifting the door up and over the locking mechanism. It should just come off. The other one gave me a little trouble taking off these tabs that go into the door frame. Hopefully this one will be easier. These are what come out of the door. Usually they actually stay on the back of this. I did break a couple of these, so it might be a good idea to just buy some extra ones. It's pretty hard not to break these. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Alright, man. Enjoy that drive back.
So once it's actually off, hanging here, there are a couple things to disconnect. This is the door latch, and then there's 1, 2, and 3 wiring harnesses that just pop out. So I was wrong about the door panel. The driver's side has 3 wiring harnesses. This one just has 2, this one and this one. and then the door latch. So there's 3 things on this side and then 4 things on the driver's side. If you're struggling to get this door latch off right here, you can pull back like that and that's what releases it. So yeah, get the door panel off. Now we're left with our speaker. And to get this off, it's just this and 3 bolts. Alright, I just wiped down the door with just some Windex just to clean it up. I have this Nico 80mm sound deadener I'm going to put all over this. And then I'm also going to insulate the plastic cavity with some Thinsulate, both for sound and thermal insulation. I'm going to stick this on. It just kind of peels back. And then I have a roller to roll it down. Alright, here's what it looks like. Got the Nico on. So here are my new 6.5-inch speakers. Unfortunately, they don't fit right in the door hole, so I had to buy these mounts. They're from DIY Van. I can put a link down below if you want to check them out. I have to take this ring and pre-drill holes to line up with these. And yeah, I'm just going to do that. These speakers came with a crossover. What a crossover does is sends lower frequencies to the woofer and then the higher frequencies to the tweeter, which is more ear level in our case. And then power just goes in here, and then you wire your speakers into here. So you can screw these onto your door, but last time I just used VHB on the back of this and then stuck it to the door panel, and that worked out fine. I don't actually have any VHB, but if you get these same door mounts, there is a little VHB on the back, and I just peeled a little bit off and stuck it to the back of that, and it worked out fine. Here's the crossover stuck to the door, VHB on the back, as you saw. Our next step is going to be cutting these wires. There's a white and violet, and then a white and orange wire. The white and violet is the positive, the orange is the negative. Just so you know, this is a 2024 Transit. These speakers came with quick disconnects. I already put them on these wires to the speakers. I also shrink wrapped them to keep them watertight. I run the wires up this way, out through this hole, and then back into the crossover, so like that. Alright, the next step after testing your speakers, if you want to test them, is getting the tweeter wire, which comes from this A-pillar. It runs down here into this rubber grommet, into the door, and then into your crossover. So the hardest part about this whole job that I struggled over there with was getting this off. There's a couple wire harnesses that you have to unhook on this side, and then you have to drill out some empty pinholes within these wiring harnesses to run these wires through. There's just not a lot of space to work with. As you can see, I can get one hand in here, but sometimes you need 2. So here's what it looks like without this rubber cap on it. On the back side, there's 2 wiring harnesses that unplug from that. I have to go ahead and get this one off first though. And how I do it is I just take a flathead and I get behind the back of this and you pry a little bit off, and then you move down and you pry a little bit off, and eventually you can get your hand in there and then just pull this whole thing back. This one's a little bit easier than this one. To get this out, there are 2 tabs, if I remember correctly. There's one up on top of the back of the black plastic piece back here, and then the bottom of it as well. There we go. So I was wrong. There is a tab right there that you can put a flathead on. And then on the bottom, there's, I don't know if you can see it, but there's, on the metal, there's a little white tab, and you just kind of got to get this over that and then get to the top, press the tab, and then it all comes out. So once you get this out, you can pull it back, and you can see there's two wiring harnesses. They're a little tough to get out because there's very little room to get back there, but you want to just take those out and just be careful about hitting these wires on this edge because it could be sharp. It doesn't actually feel that sharp, but you don't want to take the chance. So I just got this top harness out. There is a tab on the very top of it, and you just want to get a little tiny flathead, and you can just kind of press and then pry it out. So once you're at this step where you got your two wiring harnesses out of this, we need to route wires through this, and the only way to do it is via the inside of here. I don't know if you can see it that well, but see how there's two metal pins right here, and then the two spots next to that are just open. I'm just going to drill 2 holes right in there. I'll also have to match up the holes on this harness and then drill those out. Then we can run our wires through this, in here, and down to our crossover. So looking into this a little bit more, the 2 pins I was talking about on the bottom harness, there's 2 big pins on the top right of the lower harness. The 2 pins left of that are just open, so that's what we're going to drill into. But these 2 pins to the right of that are actually the speaker inputs. So you definitely don't want to mess those up, because those pins are what powers our crossover. So just be careful, make sure your drill bit doesn't actually hit the wires back in here. And same for when you're drilling out the wiring harness back in there. Got my drill. You just want to make sure you're going straight in. And then you can watch it on the back side. So I got those 2 holes drilled. What I like to do is just peel these apart a little bit. Get them nice and straight, and just see if your hole's big enough, and see if you can poke it all the way through. Alright, so I don't know if you can see that, but it is going through right there. So that's where it should pop out, so we're all good. Alright, now we're going to drill out this. On the back side you can see the wires. The wires we're looking for are white and orange and white and violet. So if you just go to the right of that, there's 2 open holes right at the top. It's these 2 top holes. So we're going to drill out here and there. So one thing to note, when you're drilling these, it does kind of sound like plastic is cracking, and I think that's because there's still tabs within these holes that would hold a pin, but since there's no pin, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. So once you got your wires drilled out, you want to take your wire from your tweeter, and it's going to run in through this hole right here, down. We're going to just try to grab them down here. Before we do that, you just want to make sure your wires are protected. This opening of metal is pretty sharp. I'm going to put some of our sound deadening just around these edges so it protects the wire a little bit. So now I'm just going to run my wire down through this hole. Alright, got it negative. This one. Alright, so it'll eventually come through. What you want to do now is you want to break these apart a decent amount because they have to run through this harness, and all the way to here. So yeah, you basically got to separate them all the way to here. Once you have your wires through this hole, you're going to take your wiring harness that you just drilled out. You're going to feed a wire through the back side of that. Like so. Just want to pull it all the way through. And you take the negative, feed it through as well. Alright. Now we've got wires through here. You're going to do the same thing right where you drilled holes here. Find it helpful if you just kind of pull on the wire like this, get it nice and straight, then feed it through. Alright, so now as you can see, I got both my speaker wires coming out of the back side of this, and then it's just a matter of getting these wires through the rest of this rubber grommet and then over. How I get these speaker wires through the wire loom or the rubber grommet is I take a zip tie. Over here I had a bigger one that was a little more rigid, that I thought it was a bit easier, but basically I'm just going to tape the wires to this zip tie. Just want to make sure your wires can't come off your zip tie. Then let's take a little bit of WD-40, or you can use silicone, just so it has a little bit of glide. And then you just want to make this rubber piece as straight as possible when you're putting your wires in. What I actually did is I put a zip tie down through the top because it went in that way first try. I was struggling to get it up through the bottom, so I just tried a different method. So I just taped the cords to the end of the zip tie in here. And I'm just going to pull it through. Once you have your wires through the loom, through the rubber grommet, and out the other side, then you can start putting back together your two wiring harnesses into these. It's going to be easier for you guys to get this rubber grommet back onto the front of this plastic piece while you have it out here. You just want to keep pulling these through, so you don't want any slack in between your two harnesses, so they mount right. So now that we have our wires through the grommet, you just want to put all this back together. This it just pops right back in. And same with this side, pops right back in. It should click, so make sure you hear a click. After that, I'm gonna just wire it up. So unfortunately, our tweeter wires aren't quite long enough to reach our crossover. I suppose if I put it over here more, I could have, but oh well. I'm just gonna extend the wire a little bit and then attach some wire lugs. This is my negative. It's gonna go right there. Now for the moment of truth, just want to make sure all your work works. Alright, so now that we're all wired up and everything works, sounding good, just got to put the door plastic back on, the door frame. I did insulate this with some spare Thinsulate that we had left over from our insulation, and made sure all the door mount points are still showing and all the holes you can still get through, like there and there, these guys, and all these little plastic tabs. And so once you have that done, if you're going to do this, you can just kind of pop it right back on. So what I didn't record in my speaker upgrade was the subwoofer, but I will briefly explain how to install this. I won't go super into depth, but I will explain how I did it here. So I got the BassLink Mini. It's a powered subwoofer and it fits under the seat. That's what we're looking at right here. All those wires go into its own wiring harness that came with the subwoofer. I have a swivel seat, so everything has to go up through the hole of the swivel so it can still swivel around. All the wires are routed through the battery box. Up through that, I had to cut a hole in a piece of plastic to get them up, and then after that, they go up through the swivel seat hole. Since we have just a factory radio, I don't have RCA inputs, so what you do is what's called, you do line level inputs, and those come on the wiring harness that came with it. So all I had to do was take a speaker wire, which is routed down here under this piece of plastic, and then right here. So that wire, just normal speaker wire, goes up to where you saw the wires of the tweeters. That's where the factory, both door speaker and the tweeter wire, come up through here. So you can just tap into that. I think what I did was I cut them completely and then I used lever nuts to get the connections going. Do that for both left and the right side. So for the right side, here's my wire. It just gets routed under the floor and back up to that same point I just showed you on the left-hand side. But this wire runs pretty much along our floor right here, and it comes up right in here. So it just gets routed into the battery box. So for power, I tap power just directly from the battery. It has a sensing wire. It doesn't turn off right away, which is one of the problems. I usually just hit the button for on and off. If there's one thing I could change, I'd change that, but I'm not really sure how to. And then for the ground, again, I just went to the battery. The subwoofer also came with a bass knob, so you can adjust the amount of sub you want just right here. I mounted it just with a piece of Velcro so it can come off and sticks on easily if I ever needed to move it. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to give it a like, if you thought it was helpful, give it a like. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below and I'll try to answer them. We are building out this whole van, so if you want to subscribe to our channel and learn how we did that, that's cool too. Maddie and I will see you in the next video.